Hey guys, it's Maple here once again with, once again, some of the dumbest shit you'll see in a hot minute. And this time around, it is kind of a recreation of old cast on crit shield charge discharge, but it's in the form of prismatic burst and surging thoughts. The shit sword that gives you like a lightning glacial cascade. So the idea for the build was to grab a forbidden Shako and get level 35 Prismatic Burst, because I have once before tried Prismatic Burst and concluded that it's really not that good and can't really be made too good, but I did have a look at it in the 35 Shako support, and off of that it looked like it could be made good. It's got something like 5 times more damage than the regular level 20 support gem. So instead of hitting like 2,000 top end fire, you'd be hitting something like 10,000 top end fire. It of course comes at the cost of a support gem, and then you have to figure out what you're going to do with it. Now the idea behind the build was to have a spell slinger set up using frenzy, and then just deliver the system through a frenzy wand hit, and kind of do some other spells at the same time. But then we started looking at Surging Thoughts, which is the sword I'm using, and that's the sort of blue pulse thing that's being released, and decided that we could incorporate both at the same time with shield charge. So every time I shield charge, I have this lightning cascade thing happening, which helps with the clear, and then every time I actually connect a shield charge, I will explode one of the 3 elements, lightning, cold, fire, with prismatic burst. That should deal a lot more damage, and it kind of does something. So it can clear. It has okay single target. As shield charge of a trigger, it's not very good. So when I go onto single target that's really sort of big, then we might have to put on Blade Storm or a different gem altogether. I've yet to really test everything out with that, and ultimately it might just not be that good compared to, let's say, an Ignite version of this entire situation, but it does definitely do something. Now you might still be better off doing something like Spellslinger with wands instead, but this has created a bit of a novelty of a playstyle of shield charging around and killing everything essentially with your shield charge, which is something that did happen when shield charge got changed many years ago, and then something that could have happened when you could do cast on crit, shield charge, discharge, or various other cast on crits with your shield charge. And it's it's kind of something. It's a little bit worth, but at the same time, shield charge does not feel the best to use these days. There is like a lot of collision on little particles and lots of rocks and boxes and all kinds of stuff. So to be honest, shield charge does not feel amazing to use full time. It's nice as a travel skill when you're actually built into attack speed, movement speed. It's certainly nice as a travel skill, but using it full time as your sort of source and delivery of damage does feel a bit scuffed and a bit jank, and that's going to be up to feeling it out for yourself to experience it. But I've gotten this far to like level 92 or 3 or something like that, and I might still take it a bit further, but it's not the funnest playstyle to keep going with. Maybe doing the Ignite version of this sort of thing would be substantially more fluid, since you'd only really have to shield charge like once into a giant area, and then everything gets Ignite Pro Lift. But that's something that might happen again in the future. This is a simple... This version of the build, this is going to stay as hit base and try and hit really hard. And I was trying to hit really hard so that we'd only crit once and kill everything once, and that's why I stacked brutal charges on this build. So I've got 11 brutal charges for 33% chance to deal triple damage, and in the end I am dealing something like 5 million on average hits, which is still decent, but it's not quite where I would have wanted it to go for pure one-shot madness. So I think it will falter in pure endgame scenarios, but we'll see when we get to just the last few little bosses. And if there is anything good to share, I'll of course post it on YouTube, but otherwise you could maybe just assume that it was a bit of a map clear build, and it was a bit silly with Prismatic Burst, just trying to get it to work in some capacity, and Forbidden Shako I felt was the only real last way it could work, because the numbers behind it normally just aren't really there. So in any case, let me go ahead and show you how I built this character. So here's the character. It's level 92 Cosmetic Burst, 92.5, and Cosmetic Burst, meaning Prismatic Burst, even at level 35, I imagine it was going to be kind of cosmetic and not do that much damage. So it is based around the Forbidden Shako. These are pretty rare to come by, and then getting an actual good roll on them, pretty rare of course as well. You can like brute force it with Divine Orbs and eventually hit something, but that is very costly, and realistically, you're probably not going to be playing with one of these almost ever. But Prismatic Burst wasn't the most expensive thing on the market. It is a little costly. So a level 35 one could run you anywhere from like 5 to 20 divines, depending on what's attached. This one is 15 divines, and the momentum attached to it basically does nothing. But also be careful that you don't get baited into things like, let's say, CoC effect is another thing on there. So you got Prismatic Burst and CoC effect. The CoC effect won't affect the Prismatic Burst because it's not another gem that's socketed attached to that Prismatic Burst. So realistically, you will be running like a 5-link, and since you need a trigger, you will just have like 3 additional links. And in this case, I'm using Woke Area most of the time, and then CoC for the swap. Otherwise, crit damage and power charge on crit support. Don't have amazing things to put here because things like Trinity don't work because it's a trigger. So yeah, you are kind of limited. And to show you an example of what it looks like, so the difference between the Prismatic Bursts, by default, it has something like this, level 20. So like I said, about, you know, if you're using a level 21, which you should be, probably about 2k top end, and then the actual Prismatic Burst in the Shako, 10k top end on your cold and your fire, and a huge one on your lightning. So it can get pretty big, and it also increases the cooldown recovery rate since it by default has like a 1 second cooldown or something. Cooldown time 0.8, and then it has 60 cooldown at level 21. At level 35, it's got 94 cooldown rate recovery. So stacking even more cooldown recovery isn't going to be huge since it's already got so much, but we still do a little bit more, and that end result gets us to a 0.38 cooldown time on it. So you can see just by standing around what the average damage is like here in my POB, just not against bosses and stuff. It's about 5 million against bosses and shit. It goes down to about 3.7, but that's just like kind of an average here. We do have triple damage charges from Arn's Anguish, so part of the idea of the build was to stack endurance charges with a Scion and just get lots and lots of these guys. So 33% chance to deal triple damage, and I am using the Scion Forbidden Flash Flame thing for an additional charge to each of them: Frenzy, Endurance, and Power. And that's why we have so many of all the charges. So that's the thing. And then I'm also using Surging Thoughts, which is honestly a piece of shit still. I've looked at it a few times this league because I was like, hey, maybe we could make that a thing. Its numbers are just so bad, and yeah, it's still bad. But in this build, it serves a somewhat of a purpose. First of all, our weapon here just has to do something cosmetic, some kind of damage. Has a bit of spell damage, bit of area. But other than that, it also gives the lightning cascade thing, and in this build it serves a purpose just as additional clear. So the burst itself won't always hit things. This will help like hit a few other things, and then also help put up some ailments so that we can do good damage otherwise. The Greater Harbinger thing sucks at the moment because it gives, as it says here, Arcane Surge, granting more spell damage, increased mana regen. That's a tooltip from like old Arcane Surge. So if you do use this guy right now and it gives you Arcane Surge, it doesn't give you more spell damage. It just gives you cast speed and mana like the current Arcane Surge. So the tooltip needs to be updated, I suppose. And we don't need cast speed or mana regen in this build. So the Harbinger buff is not that good, but it also gives a buff that grants chance to shock and lightning pen. So it's a bit of extra lightning pen. And that's something in this build. It's not nothing. So that's kind of the build idea behind these two. You can, of course, like I said, instead do Spell Slinger or trigger with a bow, but this seemed to just make a bit more sense for the high meme value, and couldn't really see a huge benefit to doing the Spellslinger setup otherwise, because you would have to do Spellslinger, you would have to then focus heavily on some reservation and make sure another spell is doing good things too. But realistically, the star of the show is going to be the level 35 Prismatic Burst, so it's hard to like accompany anything else to really assist that in any meaningful way. So we did it as kind of an afterthought with a Surging Thoughts. So other than that, the build has Leadership's Price, because balancing stats is pretty easy this time around. With tattoos, you just, take some stats off, add some stats, whatever, pretty comfy. We've got the Surging Thoughts, of course. We've got Endurance Charge stacking everywhere, so here and there and here. This shield base was 15C, and then just use some essences to try and craft it and then finish it off. The base of Endurance Charge here was 3 Divines, but you can get lots and lots of different boots that have corruptions with +1 endurance that are pretty cheap. And then just needed some accuracy, the classic combo Mark of the Shaper, and then a temple chest I found that has a bunch of life ES and energy shield and armor. So then we get some fizz damage reduction, and go energy Eldritch Battery, and then all of our mana gets taken care of by EB, and also lets me do a haste as an additional aura. Now I might look a bit squishy, 2.1k life with Petrified Blood. I still have a bit more I can change for life reservation so that it can get higher in the life and become 50%, something like that. And I'll probably get my way up to that in the next level or two if I can be fucked leveling. So we'll try that on stream today. But I am actually kind of thick as well, because Petrified Blood, we've got good sort of regen leech, we've got good armor with determination up and some fizz damage reduction. I got glancing blow block for both spell and regular attacks, so we're not exactly squishy, so it's not too bad of a situation. Problem is that with this setup, yep, I am very melee and I do have to trigger through shield charge. Of course, it's a lot better when you have all your buffs up and stuff. And at the end of the day, I will probably be using something like Blade Storm for an actual trigger for my Prismatic Burst, so that it can be a bit more ranged. I'll probably try out Spectral Throw, Spectral Helix, stuff like that as well. But at the moment, I've only been trying red gems because it's a bit hard to micromanage the colors at the moment. But I'll get another white socket somewhere else and then, give that a shot. And hopefully, maybe I've got some good news about what the hell this build could do in endgame, but it's a huge barrier for Prismatic Burst and the Shako to begin with. Without the Shako, I think Prismatic Burst is very lackluster. And I think the Ignite versions with like Elementalist and Shield Charge might be a bit better overall, but we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, that's pretty much all I'd say about the build for now. It's not exactly worth copying, so it's going to be tough to copy, and it's a bit of a meme. But if you want to look into it as Shield Charge Ignite, maybe that's going to be a bit bigger of a version. For now, though, that's got to be one of the dumbest builds I've put together in a hot minute, and maybe I'll have an endgame video if things go well. If nothing else, it did a pretty clean Sanctum run, and should be able to do more, so we'll see if I do more of those. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.